Hello, and welcome to an interview between Rewriting Extinction and PAWS UK. My name is William, and I work at Rewriting Extinction on our comics team, and I'm here to talk to the lovely people at PAWS.
Hiya, my name is Daisy. I'm on the campaigns team at PAWS UK. So I do a lot of work with all of our campaigns in companion animals, wild animals, and farmed animals as well. So a whole range of species.
Amazing. And we've obviously made a comic together in the last few weeks, which you can see here. And yeah, well, I thought it would be good for us to have a chat about what you guys do and all the amazing work that your team does, and we can learn a little bit about it. So starting straight away, can you tell us about your Fur-Free Britain campaign?
Absolutely, yeah. So 20 years ago, the UK government brought in the Fur Farming Prohibition Act, which banned the production of fur farming because of how cruel it is. And that act saw the last remaining fur farms in the UK shut down for good, which was fantastic. But here we are 20 years later, and we are still continuing to profit from the same cruelty by allowing fur to be imported and sold from other countries. So this Fur-Free Britain campaign is essentially calling for an end to this hypocrisy. And the campaign is a collaboration between campaigners and animal welfare organisations who are trying to encourage the government to finally ban the import and sale of fur so that we can end our role in this cruelty.
That's brilliant. And what can the average person do to support the campaign?
So we are actually running a petition trying to urge the government to ban import and sale of all fur products in the UK. And we really need as many people as possible to sign it. If we reach 100,000 signatures, the government will consider the topic for a debate in Parliament. So we really need those signatures. We know that there is a huge amount of support from MPs across the political spectrum. So we are now trying our hardest to make this issue impossible to ignore.
Okay, excellent. And obviously, fur is quite is a terrible thing that for people to use in general. But why is it important that we put pressure on the government for the Fur-Free Britain campaign?
There are a couple of reasons, really. Essentially, it is unbelievably cruel, the methods used.
Of course.
100 million animals are killed every single year in the most horrific ways imaginable for their fur. A lot of people might not even realise that they're wearing real fur. It can end up as a trim on a jacket or something as innocent as a pom-pom on a bobble hat. And, it goes without saying the conditions are deplorable, but it's also actually incredibly dangerous to keep wild animals in these conditions. So the small, very cramped, unhygienic cages are actually a breeding ground for emerging viruses and zoonotic diseases, which are diseases that can be transmitted from animals to humans or vice versa. And historically, zoonotic diseases have actually been the origin of most pandemics. So it's really important that we end our complicity in this trade for the sake of both animal and human health, and obviously for the welfare of the animals as well.
Oh, that's very interesting, actually. I didn't know that about zoonotic diseases and pandemics. It's rather topical, but that
exactly. Yeah. And very recently, actually, about I think it was 1,600 mink had to be culled in an Italian fur farm due to a recent COVID outbreak. So it's very easy to spread diseases because they're in such confined spaces.
That's horrible. That sounds really horrible. You mentioned mink, and I was just wondering what animals are sort of basically which animals are involved. Obviously there's a large range. Canada Goose, obviously quite famous for what they do and the protests and stuff against them. But what are sort of the main animals that are involved in this process?
The main animals that are involved are mink, definitely mink, raccoon dogs, chinchillas, as well as I think sometimes, because basically 95% of fur animals are farmed, but the rest are wild caught.
Okay.
So there can be things like coyotes, if we're in America, and things like that, beavers, whatever falls into the trap basically can be. But definitely fur farm wise, it's mink, raccoon dogs, and chinchillas.
Is there a specific reason for that, or is that just sort of what is the easiest?
I would think it would be a mixture of the density of fur, and also how easy it is to breed them, as well as things like their mortality rate. So there are some animals that might do really, really poorly in confined environments, and they don't breed and they die almost instantly. But I would assume that the animals that are bred for these purposes, breed very well. They live until they're slaughtered, and they have a very high density of fur. So we breed these animals to have more fur than they should. When you look at some of the images of foxes on fur farms, their coats are not like they should be in the wild, because we've bred them to have more fur than they need to.
Wow, that's really quite disturbing. That's horrible. Can you tell me who are the biggest culprits in terms of internationally, country-wise, where a lot of the fur is from, but also specific companies, if there are specific companies that are pretty bad actors?
So we import most of our fur from China, currently, but there are some players in Europe that have been bad as well. Very recently, Denmark used to be quite a big player, but they during the COVID outbreak again, they had to cull, I think it was something like 17 million of their mink in their fur farms. Yeah, because it was just outbreak after outbreak on different farms. So we can't pin the blame on countries that aren't in the West. The Western countries are also doing damage as well, and we like to think of ourselves as innocent, and the other countries who have banned it as well. But by importing this fur, we say it's too cruel to produce here, but then we import fur. So it does. It's a lot of hypocrisy that the government have made this act to say, absolutely, it's too cruel, we can't produce fur here, but then we'll import, millions of pounds. We have actually imported, since the Fur Farming Prohibition Act, we have imported £800 million worth of fur into Britain. So there is a huge level of hypocrisy going on, that we're blaming other countries for producing this fur, but we're the ones buying it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So the government has taken a fairly crucial first step, but they're really missing what is actually a more crucial second step.
Exactly. And we held an event in Parliament at the beginning of this year to celebrate with them the fact that, yes, this is fantastic. This is the 20th anniversary of the Fur Farming Prohibition Act, but now we need to really pull our boots up and end the cruelty in the UK for good by stopping the sale and import of it. Like you say, it's the most important second step, really, is finally ending our complicity in this trade.
Yeah, I mean, fingers crossed the government listen. In terms of how you see the overall fur industry, is the West sort of all moving in a similar direction to the UK, or are we quite an outlier that have put in this act?
over 15 European countries have actually introduced legislation to either ban or start phasing out fur farming. So we are one of them. The Netherlands very recently, Serbia as well, Czech Republic, Belgium, and I think Norway have a goal to do it by 2025. So, we are on the right road, but obviously these are just a handful of countries. We really need everyone to be helping with this issue.
Yeah, it's good that there's been a first step for lots of other countries as well, or a few. Yeah, like you said, that needs to be every country.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a few countries that have banned it for good, but I'm not sure whether they are also doing the sneaky backdoor of importing and selling it, but saying we're not producing it. I know that there is a big movement in Europe to go fur free. We our international colleagues at PAWS recently took part in a big fur campaign, which wasn't just PAWS, it was a lot of other NGOs as well, to try and show the European Commission that people in Europe don't want fur anymore. And they got millions of signatures. So there is definitely a growing movement. I think the public, a lot of the time, are in full support of fur bans, but it's trying to get that message to the governments as well, because I think a lot of it is economic reasons.
Of course. So, on top of the petition, what else can the general person do to help?
I would say make sure you try and educate yourself on how to spot real fur from fake fur. So one of the best ways is if you see a fur trim on a jacket, you can kind of separate the furs until you get down to the base. And if it's woven, if it looks like woven fabric, then it's faux fur. But if it looks like skin at the bottom, then it's real fur.
Right.
There's a few other ways as well. So being able to if you look at individual pieces of fur, and if they kind of taper off naturally, then that's an indicator of real fur. Whereas if they're quite blunt at the top, it's often faux. But yeah, basically also making sure that the people you're buying from are fur free. Mm-hmm. So there's a really great program called the Fur Free Retailer Program that you can, it's a website and you can literally type in any company and it will say whether they've gone fur free or not.
So what are sort of 3 things you want the general person to take away from this campaign?
That is a great question. I would say make sure that you're buying from fur-free retailers. So like I said, make sure your money is going to the right people. We don't want money in the pockets of people who are still using fur. Also, educate others. So if you now have this knowledge from this campaign, that is amazing. But make sure you're telling your friends, your family, you're putting it on your Twitter or your Facebook. Talk to people about how cruel it is. There are still people out there that do wear fur, and it honestly could be that they just don't know the cruelty behind it. So educate others. Try and be a voice for the animals. So, support your animal NGOs, sign petitions, share them online. If there is any spare pennies to donate, that's absolutely fantastic. But the main thing is, trying to tell the government that we don't want this. Sign as many petitions as you can from as many NGOs as you can. So why did you want to work with PAWS UK on this issue?
Well, at Rewriting Extinction, obviously a large part of what we do is focused on animals. It's sort of in the name, well, it is in the name. And we come from a place of love, really, of animals and all things nature. And we had heard about you before, and we thought the campaign is a great idea. None of us at Rewriting Extinction wear or use fur. It's very deplorable. I don't really know why anyone would. If we can raise awareness to the issue and help, get more signatures on the petition and help, really pressure the government into making that crucial second step, then that's fantastic, and we're more than happy. Actually, we are very happy to be involved in that.
That's great. And how much did you know about the fur industry in the UK before collabing with us?
Honestly, very little. I had heard about the Mink cull in, I think you said Denmark. I remember hearing about that during COVID. And I was aware of a bit of backlash around Canada goose. I remember people throwing like fake blood on people outside their shops in central London. But really, apart from that, I had never heard of this law, the Prohibition Act. And yeah, I was quite surprised, really. But as someone, I guess, morally, I wouldn't choose fur anyway, but I couldn't say I had any actual knowledge about the industry and how that worked. And actually the idea that we input, I think you said nearly £800 million since the Prohibition Act just seems, ridiculous, to put it bluntly.
Yeah, exactly. What do you hope the publishing of your artwork will achieve?
It's a good question. I think a lot of what we at Rewriting Extinction do and what we like to, what we hope we achieve really is that we bring our messages and the messages that we want to promote to a larger audience, and that can be anyone around the world. It doesn't necessarily have to be people in the UK that obviously this petition is for, but messages that we feel are important, we like to spread. And working with artists that have a global reach and audiences in every single country on the planet is a fantastic way of doing that, because you get people that there may not be this discussion where in the place they're from. It may not even be a thing that people think that fur is not a great thing to wear. We want to build on the message that you guys are shouting about, really, and share that globally, because if you can start sowing those seeds across the world, that then you can make a larger change, and hopefully 10, probably more like 20, 30 years down the line, we then might get a more global assault on the fur trade, and that's what we're here for, to make a difference, to save those animals. We don't want animals in horrible circumstances being murdered just so someone can have a bit of fur on them, especially when things like faux fur exist and there's sort of not actually any reason for you to have it. It's just cruel. There is no actual reason that you could possibly want to wear fur anymore. So, or I say anymore, ever. There's no reason. So yeah, that's what we hope to achieve, to educate people on the issues that the UK is having, but also make them think about the issues that are maybe exist in the place that they're from, but maybe they're not aware of it, or they are, and then they can put pressure on the people in their country to make a change like we are.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thanks very much for speaking to us today, and thanks for making a comic with us, and all the best with your campaign.
Thank you so much.
Amazing.